Chaim, I want to ask about Jerusalem. Some of the questions I have came out of the book, not directly related to the talks. One of the things I noticed is that, well, and you did mention it, that there would be sort of a series of some kind of checkpoints around the perimeters of the city to make sure that the wrong people don't go into, or people from the other state don't have easy access or unqualified access to the other state. Is that feasible? Does it create a situation where the city itself is actually isolated from both countries? And I'm just imagining people who, like I used to work in Jerusalem, and the traffic of people driving in and out of Jerusalem every day, everybody's going to stop at a checkpoint. Doesn't this create an artificial, isolated problem? And also, it sounded like from the understanding of the district management that you are assuming there will be ethnically based neighborhoods that are adjacent but essentially ethnically defined. Is that, am I understanding it correctly? If so, is that a formula for entrenching the sense of ethnic divide in Jerusalem?
I'll start with the second question. The idea, I mean, what is important to understand is that Jerusalem, or the population, both parties in Jerusalem, we're not talking about homogeneous communities. Of course, in the Jewish side, it's very easy to mention, the ultra-Orthodox Jews and the fact that, that each district that will be characterized by its own population will be managed by its own people. I think it's part of spreading a more democratic management in cities in general. And I think in Jerusalem in particular. So let's ignore the ethnic affiliation and let's start thinking about other affiliations. I mean, religious, cultural maybe, and of course there are several mixed areas in the city. So they will have to be managed in a different way. So the idea of having different districts is in order to give the power to the people to manage their lives in the city. Now, about this idea of Jerusalem as a bubble that you have to control who is in, who is out. Of course, I agree that we need to think about it in a kind of, think about the process. While at the beginning, I believe that some kind of control over who is in, who is out, will have to happen, I guess, or I hope that in the future this is something that will be less, or it will be, that it will be loosened in a way and enable people a more free or a freer movement inside the city and out of the city. I agree that, there are many very, could I say, issues, like I wouldn't say technical, but, the actual issues that must be resolved. I didn't think, about it in such a resolution.
Okay, Benedetta, this is a very complicated piece of it. And I'm not a security expert, but I think there are a few quite clear questions. And you said it a little bit differently, but in the paper, it says a very clear statement that Israel should be controlling the perimeter borders. Now, I want to understand how that changes or how that prevents a situation of even more widespread sense of second-class citizenship, considering that the current situation for Palestinian citizens of Israel going in and out of the country's borders is totally unfeasible and unequal. Would that not just broaden the situation, and is that intended to be a permanent resolution? No. Okay, so I think start with that, but the other question that I have is a bigger one, which is, when you talk about the current asymmetries of power, but then on the other hand, there has to be dependence on a Palestinian internal security force so that the Israeli military doesn't have to be there. How is that reconciled? And what can be done in the starting from sooner rather than later?
And do answer in 1 minute. Okay, so the first. Yes, it is. These are two very sore points, meaning that for both points we spend a lot of time discussing them. So let me be the channel of the discussion. On the external perimeter, we've had a lot of conversation about how that would work out. And again, the two issues are related, because those who were in the group were very adamant about the fact that Israel should have the overriding responsibility as opposed to presence. For the external perimeter, we're making that argument on the basis of the gap in capabilities. So their argument was, because today the Palestinian security sector, it's not in terms of personal equipment and training up to the task, then the overwhelming, overriding responsibility should be Israeli because Israel has the better defense capabilities. So that was the argument made. And that's solely a security argument. So from a political point of view, it carries all sorts of implications that I would say would undermine the vision of the project. So it's one of, I think, of the sore points. How did we think about moving it forward? The idea is, one, gradual incremental. So firstly, that is not a final solution. It's one of the steps, and we have this 5-year review process that ultimately should change the status to a 50-50 responsibility. So that was division. At the moment, the thinking in the group was responsibility means coordination, doesn't mean presence. So there was no, for example, at external crossings in Allenby, you wouldn't see Israeli security personnel. There would be electronic surveillance, but in the external crossings, there would be no person from the IDF. And if you look at the Philadelphia corridor, that would be entirely secured by Palestinian security forces with international assistance. The point that I think I haven't mentioned because I had 10 minutes and I'm not so sure how that would fly is the Jordan Valley. The people in the group were absolutely adamant that in an early stage there would be no sense in which any Israeli government would agree to immediately give that up. That would only be the result of a progression of and change of the status quo and lessening of the gap. So I mean that's the honest answer what was discussed in the group. But I think it was very much acknowledged that this is a problem. It was one of the sore points, and then allows me to answer the second point. It is imperative to have any of this work that the asymmetry in capabilities is tackled. Now, I would say that since you ask others what is being done, that is something that is very much in the vision at least, and there has been substantial financial and military assistance being poured into boosting the Palestinian security sector. I would argue that to make this work as a 50-50, there's still quite a bit of work to be done. But I think that is one of the main limitations is, as in, do you want to implement this tomorrow? What's missing? That's one thing. The other thing missing would be political will on the Israeli side, but that's not what you asked me to discuss.
No, but yeah. I mean, I think that the point that is very clear here is that we are not trying to gloss over the problems, okay? We are trying to highlight them so that we understand exactly how big they are or how, discrete, separate they are, and we can try to address them. Riman, I mean, this is, your topic raises big issues, so we're going to end with your question and then move it to the audience. I guess one is a technical point. From the document, it says that the constitutional lawyers that you consulted with were troubled by the idea that none of the residents, let's say a resident of Palestine living in Israel, or a resident of Israel, an Israeli citizen living in Palestine, they would have no route to naturalization. So they could not become citizens of the other side. And it said that in your paper that the constitutional lawyers thought this was a problem. And I want to ask, we're doing something or we're thinking about something unusual here. Is that really a violation of civil and human rights, or is it something that you think the people on both sides could live with? Because I think that is ultimately about the character of both states.
Well, actually, that reference about the constitutional lawyers is related probably to Yael's paper. So I don't know. I don't have like the background, but you kind of highlighted the essence of the problem, I guess.
No, that's not.
Okay. Well, I think that sometimes we tend to estimate the practical, how really practical solutions can bring about change, and also bring about changes in what people need. So if I am a resident in, say I'm a Jerusalemite. I don't know how Jerusalem will end up to be, but or maybe let's give another example. Say I'm a Palestinian living in Haifa, and I have all the rights of a resident in Haifa, but don't have the right to become an Israeli citizen. So so that is that can be okay with me, because again I've made a choice of which country I want to be citizen of. That's the whole, you make that choice. You say, okay, I want to, you can have that choice. You can choose to be a citizen of either of the countries. That's the...
Next generation as well?
No, next generation, no, that's what it says.
So the kids of a Palestinian living in Israel
Yes.
will be Israeli?
No, they will be Palestinian.
They will be Palestinians.
Yes. Yes. It's a problematic issue, and again, I'm not the legal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
authority.
good. So I'll summarize just by saying that I think that the reason why I feel there's an urgency to considering how to do some of these things, how to set the groundwork for some of these things, is because when we look at the establishment of new states or new forms of states, they don't succeed if they just one day pop into existence. Israel did not succeed in 1948 because it just was created deus ex machina, whatever. I mean, it was because there were state institutions in place, and that's why I'm pushing this point. Go. In the middle. Yes. And please, if you can say your name and maybe where you're from.
My name is Gara. I am from Chiha, which is a village in the Galilee.
Speak up.
Palestinian. Thank you very much for your presentation and clearly a lot of work went into this. What struck me most actually about this so far this morning was that there was one word that was glaringly absent. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't hear the word colonialism at all. And there was no mention of the settler colonial framework, and rather the framework adopted was of two parties with national conflicts, or two conflicting national groups. And I find that quite problematic, and one point that I'll pick up on is when Dr. Berti mentioned about Israel having control over the external borders, it's maintaining the existing power structure, which is that of a colonial power and an indigenous colonized people. So, unfortunately, I think a lot of what was already being said was a reinforcement of the current power structures of Israel as a colonial oppressor. And I know you just said you're not trying to gloss over these problems, but that sounds like glossing over a major problem. And finally, with regards, I didn't quite understand what would happen to the Palestinian citizens of Israel. Would they have to choose residency over citizenship, or would they choose citizenship and then they would forfeit their rights to identify as Palestinians? Because if I had to choose, I would be reluctant to choose a Palestinian resident of Israel, because I would be worried that I'm forfeiting my rights to the land of Palestine in 48. Thank you.
Questions. I didn't mention it before, but please also try to keep your questions short, and if you can, direct them at somebody. Yeah, we'll take 3 questions, so 1, 2, and then 3. Okay. And then
Thank you. My name is Mohammed. I would like just to ask Bendita to clarify the point of electronic control over Allenby Bridge, and what I want even to clarify, that when we talk about to understand the needs of the people, for the Palestinians, I think the borders is one of the vital issues, okay, because they want to feel independency. You know, they want to feel in freedom, that I can go out of my country without any third party. Could you clarify this point, please? Thank you.
Third question. Yeah, I point to you.
Okay. I'm Andres. I'm a volunteer from Germany. And I want to ask Mr. Jacobi, what's about Gilo? Because the Israeli citizens say that it belongs to Jerusalem, and the Palestinians said it is a settlement. The UN said it's an illegal settlement. So how do we deal about it?
Okay. One round of answers. answers, and then we'll take other questions. One round of answers. Go. Oh, yeah? Okay, you can deal with more? Fine.
I can answer it quickly.
Okay, this person in the jacket, and then you, and then I think Hillel, you've had your hand up also. Yep. Person behind you. And then you. First, yeah, one or the other, start.
First, good evening. Thank you for your presentation. But my question is, when we talk about one state, which means two people in one state and one place, we have a model for this in Jerusalem. What's happening now in Jerusalem? Israel state and Israel government send the settlers to kill the Palestinian in Jerusalem. So when we talk about one state, what about the control? If it's with Israel, what about the security? What about the Palestinian life? This is a big problem if we talk about one state. Thank you.
Towards Benedetta?
Anyone can answer. Thank you.
I guess I can.
Okay, so
Well, first of all, we're not talking about a one state. One more question.
one more question, yeah. I think maybe 5 questions is enough to start.
Excuse me, I need to thank you for this event and ask you 2 questions. What will happen for the Jerusalem ID? And also, what about the project of the Big Jerusalem? Many thanks.
A metropolitan Jerusalem? No, what?